The Arizona desert stretched endlessly under the first pale light of dawn, the air still carrying the chill of night as the sun began to warm the sand. At the Joint Precision Evaluation Range, the soft hum of anticipation mingled with the faint metallic scent of spent brass and the faint wind shifting over the dunes. The Navy sniper team was already in position, each man focused and methodical. Lieutenant James Harlow, a Navy SEAL platoon officer, scanned the horizon with disciplined eyes, his posture alert but restrained, while Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton adjusted his Mk-13 Mod 7 rifle, checking the optic and stabilizing the bipod. Petty Officer First Class Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton murmured quietly, exchanging observations as they assessed the conditions, and Petty Officer Tyler Briggs shifted slightly, testing the comfort of his prone position. Their routine professionalism masked a quiet curiosity as the gates opened and a lone figure appeared on the distant ridge. Ava Redbird moved with measured steps, her wooden-stocked rifle resting lightly against her shoulder. The barrel modernized with a 375 CheyTac configuration and fitted with a high-magnification optic. Her calm demeanor and even breathing contrasted sharply with the taut readiness of the trained operators. The team's eyes followed her, evaluating her posture and grip, each silent glance a mix of cautious intrigue and understated skepticism. Even as they respected protocol, subtle doubts lingered. The desert seemed to hold its breath along with the men, and the tension was almost tangible. Every footstep of Ava across the sand increased the sense of anticipation, the line between professional observation and quiet underestimation beginning to blur as the day's challenge quietly took shape. Ava Redbird stepped onto the range with quiet confidence, her movements deliberate and measured, carrying the weight of both heritage and experience. She was 32, her features calm and focused, dressed simply in neutral tones that blended with the sand rather than announcing her presence. The rifle she held was a family legacy, its wooden stock polished by generations but fitted with a modern 375 CheyTac barrel and a Nightforce ATACR optic, merging tradition with precision. Each adjustment of the bipod and careful sweep of her hand along the stock hinted at countless hours of familiar practice, a rhythm born of repetition rather than training manuals. The Navy snipers watched with restrained curiosity, their eyes scanning her posture, her stance, the way she assessed the distance. Lieutenant James Harlow and Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton exchanged subtle nods, evaluating but unconvinced, while Petty Officer Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton followed every movement with a blend of professional interest and quiet skepticism. Even Petty Officer Tyler Briggs tilted his head, wondering how a civilian, dressed plainly and carrying a rifle that looked almost ceremonial, could possibly measure up to their training. The team maintained strict military decorum, masking their doubt with controlled observation, but each silent calculation in their minds betrayed their curiosity and uncertainty. Ava knelt lightly, setting her rifle on the sand with care, her eyes sweeping the horizon, taking in the wind and the layout of the range. She did not glance at their instruments or ask for range readings, relying instead on the subtle cues of the environment, a method born of tradition and intuition. Every movement was calm, precise, and efficient, demonstrating skill without flair, mastery without display. In that quiet, deliberate presence, the snipers sensed something deeper than skill alone, a quiet strength and understanding that would soon challenge every assumption they had made about her. The Navy snipers observed Ava Redbird with quiet scrutiny, noting her simple clothing, composed posture, and the wooden-stocked rifle she carried. Even with the modern 375 CheyTac barrel and Nightforce ATACR optic, her presence seemed at odds with the high-tech precision of the Mk-13 Mod 7 rifles in the hands of the team. Lieutenant James Harlow tilted his head slightly, assessing her stance, while Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton shifted his weight subtly, calculating her potential range knowledge. Petty Officer First Class Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton exchanged brief glances, weighing her experience against appearances, each forming their own assumptions with professional restraint. Petty Officer Tyler Briggs quietly adjusted his position, his eyes never leaving her as he tried to reconcile her calm demeanor with the technical demands of the range. Their murmured comments stayed low, professional, but the undertone of doubt was clear. A subtle challenge wrapped in disciplined observation. None spoke loudly enough to break protocol. Yet their internal assessments contrasted sharply with the measured, confident movements of Ava. She remained silent, composed, her eyes sweeping the desert, noting wind patterns, the shimmer of heat, and the subtle shifts in terrain with patient observation. Colonel Adam Porter, standing slightly apart, watched closely, recognizing small but telling details in her behavior that suggested genuine fieldcraft. The way she adjusted her grip, leveled the rifle, and scanned the horizon spoke of experience grounded in intuition and repeated practice rather than formal instruction. A quiet tension settled over the range as the audience could sense the disparity between the sniper's assumptions and the reality of Ava's skill. The moment stretched, reflective and edged with judgment, anticipation growing as the stage for the first shot approached, and the true measure of her ability remained just beyond observation. Commander Daniel Ricks called out the first distance of 1,000 meters, his voice carrying clearly across the range as the morning sun began to warm the sand. The Navy snipers moved with practiced precision, each checking their Mk-13 Mod 7 rifles, confirming the dope for wind, temperature, and elevation. Lieutenant James Harlow adjusted his scope and settled into position, while Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton leveled his bipod and calibrated his optic, the rifles clicking quietly as the team prepared for clean shots. Petty Officer Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton confirmed range readings and executed chamber checks, their movements smooth and rehearsed, each shot landing squarely on target, demonstrating the confidence born from countless hours of training. As the last of the team finished, Ava Redbird stepped forward, her wooden-stocked 375 CheyTac rifle resting lightly in her hands, optic aligned precisely, bipod adjusted with subtle familiarity. She knelt carefully, ran a chamber check, and inhaled deeply, letting her exhale match the rhythm of the desert air. Her eyes swept the horizon, noting wind shifts and the shimmer of heat without consulting a ballistic computer, relying on instinct honed by experience and inherited skill. Each movement was deliberate and calm, a contrast to the methodical urgency of the Navy snipers, and yet carried equal precision. When she squeezed the trigger, the rifle's report was deep and resonant, and the first round struck the steel plate center. Clean and undeniable, the sniper's eyes followed the impact, a quiet shift of surprise passing across each face as the assumptions they had carried into the range began to waver. The tension hung in the desert air, subtle but palpable, as curiosity transformed into early admiration. In that moment, the distance between expectation and reality became clear, setting the stage for the growing respect and quiet challenge that would unfold with each successive shot. The distance was raised to 1,500 meters, and the desert air began to shimmer as heat and mirage layers tested the sniper's precision. Lieutenant James Harlow adjusted his Mk-13 Mod 7, cross-checking his Kestrel 5,700 readings, while Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton recalculated holdovers on his dope card. Even with meticulous preparation, the shifting crosswinds and wavering mirage caused subtle deviations, forcing the team to second-guess their calculations. Petty Officer Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton exchanged glances, their confidence tempered by the unpredictable environment, while Petty Officer Tyler Briggs rechecked his setup, all movements professional but tinged with frustration. Ava Redbird remained calm and deliberate, kneeling lightly and adjusting her stance to account for the unseen currents of wind. Her eyes traced the flow of sand and the subtle sway of desert vegetation, reading patterns invisible to instruments. She leaned into the rifle, her breathing slow and controlled, Each muscle settled as though the desert itself were part of her preparation. When she squeezed the trigger, the round struck with quiet certainty. A precise hit that contrasted sharply with the slight errors the snipers had endured. The next distance climbed to 2,000 meters. And the challenges compounded as the heat intensified and the mirage thickened. The snipers recalculated repeatedly, their shots landing with increasing inconsistency despite the guidance of instruments and ballistic computers. Ava's approach remained unhurried, her hands steady, her focus entirely on the land and the subtle cues it offered. Each round she fired found the center of the steel plate, deepening the tension along the firing line and beginning to dissolve the assumptions the snipers had held about her capabilities. At 2,500 meters, the range approached the limits of routine training, and the operators felt the pressure of distance and atmospheric distortion. They relied on every tool, every reading. Yet their shots wavered under the shifting desert conditions. Ava adjusted slightly, using the feedback of her eyes and body rather than devices, aligning with the rhythm of the environment. Each successful hit she delivered drew quiet, reluctant respect. The mood along the line shifting from skepticism to cautious admiration, as it became clear she was not only matching but surpassing the elite in this moment of measured skill. The evaluation reached the 3,000-meter mark, a distance rarely attempted in routine military training, where extreme mirage and unstable wind layers pushed the limits of even the most advanced optics. Lieutenant James Harlow and Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton struggled to maintain consistent readings, adjusting scopes and consulting their ballistic computers with meticulous care. Yet each shot felt increasingly unpredictable. Petty Officer Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton rechecked dope cards and wind calculations repeatedly, their confidence challenged by the shifting desert conditions, while Petty Officer Tyler Briggs attempted to compensate for the distortions in the air. Every round fired by the team highlighted the challenge, as small miscalculations caused shots to drift. Underscoring the difficulty of this extended distance, Ava Redbird approached with calm deliberation, kneeling into a stable prone position and removing her boots to ground herself for maximum stability. Her eyes swept the desert, studying the mirage and the subtle distortions in the heat that indicated wind layers, each observation measured and precise. She leaned lightly into her wooden-stocked 375 CheyTac rifle, adjusted her bipod, and breathed in sync with the rhythm of the terrain. When she squeezed the trigger, the round traveled with controlled precision, striking the steel plate cleanly in the center, a flawless hit that shifted the energy on the line. The impact was subtle yet profound, a quiet declaration of skill that silenced doubt and sparked genuine astonishment among the snipers. The team exchanged glances, realizing that the threshold they had long considered the edge of doctrine had just been crossed. Even with every tool, every calculation, they could not replicate the measured instinct Ava displayed. In that moment, the desert seemed to acknowledge her understanding, and the professional skepticism along the line began to transform into respect and awe at a level of precision rarely witnessed outside of the most extreme conditions. The evaluation reached 3,500 meters, a distance that pushed both human skill and modern equipment to their absolute limits. The Navy snipers relied on every tool at their disposal, adjusting Mk-13 Mod 7 rifles, consulting ballistic computers, scanning rangefinders, and calculating wind layers. Yet each shot drifted wide under the intense mirage and heat distortion. Lieutenant James Harlow and Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton recalculated repeatedly, their faces tense with concentration, while Petty Officer Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton adjusted and fired with careful precision, only to see the rounds fall short or veer off target. Petty Officer Tyler Briggs rechecked every parameter, but the desert refused to yield predictable results, leaving the team unsettled by the apparent futility of their technology. Ava Redbird observed quietly, her eyes sweeping the terrain for subtle cues in sand patterns, vegetation sway, and shimmered layers in the heat that hinted at shifting wind currents. She timed her breathing, settling each muscle as she leaned into her rifle, her wooden stock merging instinctively with her stance. The 375 CheyTac barrel, aligned with unwavering precision. When she squeezed the trigger, the round moved with calm authority through the wavering air, striking the steel plate cleanly in the center. The impact was silent yet profound. A flawless execution that left no question about her mastery and left the Navy snipers momentarily frozen in disbelief. Colonel Adam Porter observed from a distance, recognizing the hallmarks of generational fieldcraft in Ava's method, understanding that this skill was born from inherited practice, not just modern training. The team's awe was palpable, their previous assumptions dissolving as they realized a civilian had outperformed their collective expertise. The tension along the line shifted to reverent admiration, and the desert seemed to echo the significance of the moment. Every eye tracked Ava as she prepared for the next challenge. The combination of instinct, patience, and inherited knowledge, leaving a quiet but unmistakable mark on the observers. Ava Redbird knelt quietly on the desert sand, her gaze steady as she acknowledged the lessons passed down from her grandfather and great-grandfather. Each movement, from adjusting her rifle to reading the subtle changes in wind and mirage, was shaped by decades of traditional fieldcraft embedded in her family's Cherokee lineage. Colonel Adam Porter leaned slightly forward, recognizing the intricate carvings on her wooden-stocked rifle and understanding that they represented far more than decoration. They were a tangible link to generations of long-range hunters and marksmen. He saw in her posture, her patience, and the way she absorbed the environment, a depth of skill that no modern training alone could replicate. The Navy snipers shifted uneasily, their previous confidence giving way to quiet reflection as they began to grasp the reality of who they were competing against. This was not a casual civilian, nor an untrained hobbyist. Ava's precision and intuition were the culmination of centuries of knowledge, refined and passed silently through her family. Every observation she made, every calculated breath before firing, spoke to a heritage that valued discipline, awareness, and respect for the land. The line between technology and instinct blurred, and the team realized that the mastery they had witnessed was rooted in something far older than the rifles or optics they carried. The desert seemed to hold still as the significance of the moment settled over the range. The snipers' assumptions dissolved, replaced with a reverent understanding that skill could be inherited, honed quietly, and expressed without boast or ceremony. Ava's calm presence carried the weight of her ancestors, her actions demonstrating mastery that required no acknowledgement beyond the impact of the rounds she placed. In that silence, every operator recognized the profound value of heritage, patience, and quiet mastery, their respect deepening as they absorbed the lesson she embodied. The final distance was set at 3,800 meters, a length that tested the very limits of military doctrine and long-range ballistics. The Navy snipers hesitated, adjusting their Mk-13 Mod 7 rifles, checking wind layers, and recalculating holds on their ballistic computers. But the heat mirage and shifting air made every shot feel uncertain. Lieutenant James Harlow exhaled slowly, his eyes narrowing through the scope as he considered the impossibility of the range, while Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton rechecked the Kestrel 5,700 readings and repositioned slightly, trying to anticipate the invisible currents of wind. Petty Officer Alex Rutherford and Senior Chief Eric Dalton fidgeted subtly, each internalizing the difficulty, and Petty Officer Tyler Briggs paused, rifle steady but confidence shaken by the extreme conditions. Ava Redbird moved forward with calm determination, her posture deliberate and unhurried. Her wooden-stocked 375 CheyTac rifle aligned perfectly with the target. She settled into a stable prone position, removed her boots to ground herself, and breathed in rhythm with the desert air, letting the subtle movements of heat and mirage guide her timing. Each adjustment of her grip, the steadying of her bipod, and the precise squeeze of her trigger were executed with practiced control, the culmination of generational skill and quiet observation. When the round left the barrel, It carried a steady authority through the wavering air, striking the steel plate directly in the center with a resonant clarity that cut through the tension. The line fell silent. Harlow's jaw tightened, disbelief evident as he lowered his scope slightly, unable to immediately process what he had witnessed. Benton shook his head, a quiet mutter lost in the wind, while Rutherford's hands lingered on his rifle, paused in stunned acknowledgement. Dalton exhaled slowly, and Briggs stepped back a fraction, eyes fixed on the distant plate as the realization settled in that a civilian had performed a feat beyond what even the most experienced among them had expected. Commander Daniel Ricks stepped forward, dust shifting beneath his boots, his voice steady as he acknowledged Ava's mastery and asked if he might learn from her technique. The snipers stood frozen. Respect, replacing prior skepticism. Every detail of her precision resonating with lessons they had never encountered in standard training. Colonel Adam Porter observed quietly, recognizing the culmination of inherited fieldcraft expressed in each measured movement, each instinctive adjustment, and each flawless shot. In that moment, awe and reverence filled the range. The quiet impact of heritage, skill, and discipline mastery settling over the team, leaving no doubt of Ava Redbird's extraordinary capability. Ava Redbird stood slowly, brushing a thin layer of desert dust from her hands, her rifle resting lightly against her shoulder as she prepared to leave the range. She did not pause for acknowledgement or applause, her presence calm and deliberate, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who has always known her own skill. Commander Daniel Ricks stepped forward, his voice measured and respectful, asking if she would share the traditional knowledge of her people, a request that acknowledged both her mastery and the legacy she carried. Ava inclined her head subtly, a gentle nod that conveyed acceptance, responsibility, and the understanding that some lessons must be passed on to endure. The Navy snipers remained in place, their rifles lowered, each man processing the full measure of what they had witnessed. Lieutenant James Harlow exhaled slowly, respect, replacing prior disbelief, while Chief Petty Officer Mark Benton's gaze lingered on Ava's rifle, now a symbol of both heritage and unmatched precision. Petty Officer Alex Rutherford, Senior Chief Eric Dalton, and Petty Officer Tyler Briggs each absorbed the moment differently. But the shared realization was unmistakable. True mastery does not demand recognition, and the quietest actions often leave the deepest mark. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath, reflecting the calm dignity and enduring strength embodied by Ava Redbird. Every measured movement, every controlled breath, and every perfectly placed shot had conveyed lessons far beyond technology or training manuals. The reflective silence settled over the team, underscoring the moral that genuine power and respect are earned through patience, discipline, and the disciplined passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. Ava turned and walked into the shimmering horizon, leaving behind a range transformed by humility, quiet strength, and the inspiring weight of legacy